All right, we good? Yeah, you're sweet.
All right, so super excited to have Jon here. Jon plays the Chicago Cubs. About 6 months ago, Brett Siddle, who's a player, Canisius, reached out to me and said, I have a guy who is coming to Buffalo and needs a place to train. Kind of turned into, you were obviously going to be here in the wintertime and you need a place to work out and you also want a place to work. So after a bunch of conversations, obviously, between the three of us, we kind of realized that what I do and what you do and what Sam does kind of all combines into one big thing. So I think the one thing that Hot Corner really struggled with in the past was this whole idea of we do a really good job on the hitting side and the hitting front, and we're doing a really good job on the performance front. But what we struggle with is the pitching side. And realistically, there's not a ton of pitching coaches in this area that are in professional organizations currently that understand the performance side of training and have been able to kind of grow their career through that. So what I'm super excited about with having you here is obviously talking about that and how you guys kind of combine, but also help families and people understand that like pitching is a lot more in depth than we really think it is than just picking a ball up, getting on the mound, throwing 80 pitches, icing, and then coming out the next day and throwing again. So obviously, for those of you that don't know, you played at Richmond. You're from Westchester. You played at Richmond. Played some indie ball for a little while. You're with the Chicago Cubs now. You signed a deal, which is awesome. And then you're going to be with Team Israel in the Olympics next year. So obviously, super excited to have you. I really appreciate it. But just talk about your career and kind of where you're at and kind of how you've gotten to this point and where you're going kind of moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, one thing first, just I was thinking when you were talking was like it's one thing like giving lessons in the past in Richmond and at home in New York. I've kind of been by myself or I'm bouncing around between locations, and yeah, I have different strength coaches and people that help me out and I bounce ideas off of. But like to be in a room with people that speak like the same language as you, I think is not only going to help like my coaching development and how I communicate with kids and bounce ideas off of each other and learn, but being able to do that with Sam, who speaks the same language, and yourself, who speaks the same language in terms of the way the body works and moves and everything, is something that I'm excited for. So yeah, my story. I think what's really neat to touch on with my story is the injury side of it and what I realized and what I had to do and what I had to change in terms of my development if I wanted to continue playing. So yeah, I had a pretty successful high school career. Went to Lakeland High School in Westchester County. Thought I was going to get drafted out of high school. Unfortunately, that did not happen. Went to college and had one of the worst undergraduate baseball, I'd say, careers that you could imagine. I was injured. I missed, I think, 2.5 to 3 years out of my undergraduate time. Had 5 surgeries, 4 on my arm, and I always worked hard. I worked as hard as I could. Spent way too many hours on baseball as a younger kid, and I loved it. I never was burnt out. I never had any that never bothered me. I just always wanted to be on the field. I never knew what it was like to really be injured, and even after injury, I would go through the same pattern of okay, injury, figure out what's wrong, surgery, bust my butt as hard as I can to get back to where I was, have glimpses of where I was and maybe something a little bit better, and then it all would just like come crashing down again, and I'd be in the same cycle. So what happened to me was I basically, after my senior year, I was rehabbing from my shoulder surgery, fractured my elbow again, and I said, okay, something has to change. And I made the decision to become a position player again. Like I said, I had a very successful high school career as a two-way guy, and I thought this was something that I'd be able to do again. I knew that in order to get on the field, be healthy, and play the field every day, something had to change. Like my body had to change, and I just wanted to play again. So fortunately, my college coaches gave me the opportunity to come back to Richmond and try out being a corner infielder, corner outfielder, whatever it was going to be, so long as I could hit. And I did really well that fall, so I was given the opportunity. But what happened to me during that time was I missed out on hitting for 4 years. So swinging at that time, like teaching hitting had completely changed from when I was in high school to that time period. So I had to look in the mirror and basically realize, okay, this is not working. This didn't work for you. And some stuff has to change. So started to study like the swing a little bit more, the swing changes, read a lot from Bobby Tewksbury and his book, and just following stuff online. I then started to parlay that with my strength and conditioning. I knew that the way I threw was not efficient enough to stay healthy anymore. And even though it wasn't working on the mound, I knew I still have to throw every day from third base or from the outfield. So something had to change. And I basically started to look into on my own training, new nuances of training and development, movement, the way the body works. Really started to follow what Eric Cressy and Cressy Sports Performance was doing a lot, and on my own tried to really implement this into what I did during college. So as a hitter, I was a grad school student, so I had a little bit more freedom to do my own thing. So I basically would have like a routine of stuff that I found: mobility work, movement work, a little bit of extra lifting, where I was really trying to focus on the way that my body was working and sequencing together, and I felt better than ever before. Changed up the way I threw, kind of shortened up my arm action, tried to get my arm up quicker, but at this point I was not pitching again. So fast forward to my second year of graduate school, when I started pitching again, I decided I'm going to get into this stuff a little bit more and really try to take care of my body and my arm and the way my arm works a little bit more. And once I started to get into this, I noticed my soreness level went down. I was able to recover a lot quicker. I started throwing a little bit harder pretty much every outing that 6th year. And I knew, okay, this is something I've never really experienced and felt before. I'm in much better positions on the mound. There's no more inverted W. My front foot hits the ground. My arm is not lagging behind. My arm was up right where it needed to be. So I was like, okay, these changes are really working. And then after that year, thought I was going to get drafted or a free agent contract, didn't, went to play independent ball. And luckily enough, I met, literally right after that season ended, I said, okay, I need to find the right strength coach, someone who's going to help me out to continue to develop and really do what I need to in order to get signed. I was very fortunate that Andrew Lissy from Cressy Sports Performance was spending, his family had just moved down to Richmond, so he had left Cressy, went down there to work at a gym in Richmond, and this first off season, he and I spent hours together every single day. On top of him training me, it was almost like an educational session every single day on like anatomy, how the body works on the mound, how what you see on the mound parallels to what you do in the weight room, the importance of your feet, the importance of like the way your shoulder blade, like your scapula, how everything works inside when you're overhead, and why we train the way we do. And I noticed my velocity continued to go up. I was able to sustain velocity more, repeat my mechanics more, repeat my delivery as much as possible, and everything just kind of sharpened up from there. So that's kind of, I think, the story behind the development side of it. I'm sure we'll get into a little bit more of my timeline and what happened after that as we talk, but yeah.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I mean, I think it's really cool to hear, like, you're almost the same age as me, right? And like when baseball was over for me, it was like, all right, I'm done. I'm going to get into coaching. Like, I really want to get into coaching. But like, if I think back to like 5 years ago, like how much I know now compared to what I knew when I was 22 years old is unbelievable. Mm-hmm. Even on the performance front, like I'm learning how to be able to teach kids from a hitting side of things how to hinge and how to load and unload, which is like when I played, I had no idea how to do any of that. I just thought it was all skill work and positional work. And if you get to this position, you'll hit the ball hard. And so as I develop as a coach, I'm like, man, now I see myself actually hitting better than I ever have just because I understand my body more. So I think that's really valuable and a really good thing to take in. But the cool thing is you had so much adversity, you know, injury after injury after injury, learned what is going to help you kind of get better. And then now, I mean, we're going to watch it on TV next year. You know, that's super cool. Like you're going to play in the Olympics. Like there's not a lot of people that are able to say that. And then you have a chance to actually make a ball club, like make a big league ball club hopefully one day. And I think that that's really awesome to even have that kind of trajectory. And I mean, you were going to start with AA this year, probably somewhere around there. And you know, there's a chance, like there's a real chance that after that first year you get yourself up, which is really cool. And I've seen you throw, like it's good. It's really good. Yeah. 3 good pitches, your body moves really well. You understand feel for your pitching and how it comes out. I mean, we laugh because there's so many times where it's like, all right, this one's gonna be 90, and it's 90. This one's gonna be 92, and it's 92. And that's just a really good feel that not a lot of people have. So go into, like, we talk about feel a lot, Sam and I, right? Like, we talk about how you need to feel what you're doing in the weight room so it can translate over into the hitting side of things. Like, how has that changed your career? Because I know when I was a player, I thought I felt stuff, but I really didn't. You know what I mean? Because for me, I was never ultra strong. Like, I was never super strong. I didn't understand how to properly load. And so I feel way better now. I understand my mistakes now because I know movement quality better, right? So how has that kind of changed for you? Is that performance side of training? Like, is that what changed it? And what are you able to do to adjust? Like, is it weight room stuff that's helping you adjust on the mound, or is it just pitching mechanics?
Yeah, feel is so important. So one of the first things I learned from Andrew, and he would always say this, is like, I'm really good at making people feel things. I'm like, you're a strength coach. Like, what the hell are you talking about?
Yeah, right.
What does that mean? And I learned immediately what that meant. Like turning on certain muscles, like different things you should feel at different points in your delivery. But I learned this all because I was shut down from throwing at that point. All of that was learned in the weight room. So just from like your feet gripping the ground, knowing how to turn on your knowing how to turn on your butt cheeks, like knowing how to feel your hip instead of your quad when you're trying to hinge and load down the mound. Knowing what to feel when you're doing a wall slide or something like that. And like I said before, how that translates to when your arm is overhead and you're throwing a baseball. So yeah, feel honestly changed everything for me. Like I was just always a bigger, stronger kid, like was powerful and could throw hard, but I was also slow as can be. But at the same time, it's like, how do you use your legs? Like, what does that mean? And it's like, you have to feel something in your lower half. Like you have to feel some kind of like exploding or like one hip firing while the other hip pulls back. And all of that was learned in the weight room. Like we were talking yesterday, something as simple as like a scoop toss with a medicine ball. Do you feel your front hip pull back? Do you feel from the hinge motion that you then feel like hinged hip extension? And when you feel that, is your butt cheek firing or are you feeling a push through your quad? Because trying to sustain that over 100 pitches on the mound throughout a day, if you feel it in your quad and your knee instead of your butt cheek, you might fatigue quicker. You're going to start to push across your body more. And as you fatigue, you're going to see your arm slots start to drop. Your shoulders are going to start to tilt a little bit more. And just that's going to change your release point and where you're trying to put the ball every time. So yeah, I mean, for me, feel has been so important. And a big part of my lessons is like asking kids, what did you feel on that throw? And then, so yes, all of it was learned in the weight room. Literally everything was learned in the weight room. And then once I started throwing that off season to prepare, like there was stuff we worked on, but I definitely struggled translating that to the mound. Like I think I literally just learned how to properly hip hinge down the mound a year ago. I knew how to, about a year and a half ago. I knew how to do it, but then it didn't always translate. And then when I was throwing harder, I could definitely feel the next day my right butt cheek sore instead of my right quad. Like that's great, and that's all feel. But you have to continue to be conscious of that in your training, in your throwing, in your catch play, in your bullpens, whatever it is. You have to be conscious of what you want to happen when you're doing all this. And honestly, now I'm not saying I have it down from the strength and conditioning standpoint, but I have an idea of what I'm supposed to feel and what I'm supposed to look like when I'm doing stuff. Again, it's not perfect. Like I made these changes at age 23, so there's only so much that you can iron out at that point.
Right.
Like I think that my hip capsule is just in a way stuck the way it is, and I don't know how much more I'll ever be able to like internally rotate my hips. And I know that's something that holds me back, but now that's something that I'm trying to work through. So I guess during this quarantine time, I've been so fortunate. Like I've met you guys, been able to talk a lot of shop with Sam. But like when I was in quarantine in California, I got to work with Lance Wheeler with the core velocity belt, and that's when I really like not just feeling the hip hinge a little bit consistently, like almost all the time, and then what happens after that. And Nick Serio at Athletes Warehouse in Westchester County is someone that I'm also working with when I'm home right now. And that's where I've really started to get into what happens after the hip hinge to hip extension, using your pelvis to pull your right hip through to the target. And then also, okay, I don't want to use the word brace, but I do a good job of, I thought I did a good job of stopping my front side and pulling back. And then we realized, wait, I lack so much hip internal rotation that when my foot hits the ground, my hip actually pops up instead of pulling back. And that's why maybe when I throw fastballs, sometimes I'm a little bit more upright instead of reached out like I am on my changeup. And it's like, that's something I have to learn how to feel in the weight room when I'm training, when I'm practicing, when I'm throwing plyo balls, and then of course feel it when you're playing catch, and you hope that that translates. And this is away from feel, but one thing I wanted to say before when you were talking, or this came up when you were talking, I should have said it in my story part of it. My first off season, I worked a corporate job that winter, and I trained a team 2 nights a week, very talented high school team pitchers, 6 or 8 high school pitchers with the Mid-Atlantic Orioles in Richmond. And it was an eye-opening experience for me because it was the same time I was learning all this stuff with Andrew. Then twice a week I would get to go work with these kids. 5 out of 6 of these kids all went and started training with Andrew, and it changed their careers. But then I got to translate with what I was doing into like pitching practice and development. And at that point in time, I've gone through so many surgeries, so many return to throws. I was basically building an on-ramping and then velo program for them. But then I was learning biomechanics, like anatomy, like what needs to feel and what needs to be fired on the mound. I was supposed to be there with like an hour, 15 minutes with these kids, and we'd be there till 10:30 at night doing like trying new things. And that to me is what opened my eyes to like the training and development side of it. And it's like, I was able to help myself out. If I started this stuff at the age that it probably should be started, 12, 14 years old, how many injuries could I have avoided? Like, how much more sustainable would I have been at a younger age? Like, what would that have done for me? And I know that this will help kids at that age so much. So I decided, like, boom, this is what I want to do for the time being while I'm playing baseball, and help as many kids out as I possibly can. Because right now, while I'm doing it, I think that's the best way for me to also be able to teach it. And it also makes me better as a coach, communicator, whatever the case may be.
So I know for me, like, we've had a conversation with one of the guys that you just started to work with, and it was awesome because he actually started to realize how much he should be feeling in the weight room. And for me, a lot of times, it's a hard conversation to actually get a kid to understand like what you should be feeling on the hill. Because it's one thing to feel things in the weight room. You know, you have less speed, less velocity, you have more weight, so it's easier to feel things. And then when you take a kid and you go to the mountain, he didn't understand that he's supposed to feel things. And then you didn't understand what he's supposed to feel, like how much he should work on that feel in the weight room.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times I get a lot of guys who just want to lift. Like, they just want to get freaking yoked.
Yeah.
Just huge. And like, that was my biggest issue too growing up. But I think the one thing that we're doing a good job of now, and it's awesome having you here because of it, because now guys can start to see like, okay, so we're trying to do this drill to feel this so that when I go there, I can feel it. Because it's hard around home.
Like, and then adrenaline comes in and competition, and you just black out sometimes.
So if you can't do it with, a little bit more weight where you can actually like feel it, you can take your time. If you can't feel it then, how are you going to feel it at high intensity with adrenaline in the middle of the game? That's tough. So I think that so far we've seen even the kids actually pick up like that understanding of like, here's what I should actually be doing in the weight room. Like, it's not just about lifting.
Nope. And I agree completely. There are times when you're out there and like you have to feel things because you don't feel very good on that day. So you need something to fire to make that adjustment and to make your stuff better on that day. But also, like I just said, like there's a lot of the time when I'm on the mound as a reliever, like I'm in a way almost like blacked out, like so competitive, like so much adrenaline going through my body that like that is where you need everything you've done to just kind of take over. And when those days happen for me, they're literally always my best days. And I'm kind of some kind of unconscious on the mound in those days, but I always notice I'm in better positions on days like that.
I think that's the dream though. I mean, that's because we talk about it all the time with hitting. The kids who think less usually perform the best.
Yeah.
But like, even for me, like I remember I used to like, if I got out, I would get out and I would try to make an adjustment. I would figure it out. And like, I spent way too much thinking. Where if like I just went practice and like went hard, right? So every time I practice, weight room, whatever it was, actually trying to feel everything. So when I play, I don't have to. Yeah. Because you just drill it with every single thing you do, whether in the weight room or on the field. That way you get to a game, you don't have to.
100%.
You can just play.
Think about guys like Jacob deGrom, Corey Kluber, Scherzer, Verlander, guys that have been the best for more than just a year or two. Yeah. Like I think they're probably at a point where they're not needing to feel like, yes, there's going to be times where they have to feel something on the mound, but they look identical from pitch to pitch. Yep. Fastball, slider, changeup, whatever it is, they're the same. Every outing they look the exact same, and I think that is, yes, they're the most elite of athletes out there, but I think part of that is like what they do in the weight room, like what they're conscious of in their training, in their practices. They all have their own feels that they have to do before the game. Like, I'm sure what Mad Max is doing before a game is a lot different than Corey Kluber, who's pretty emotionless, it looks like at times. And whatever their feels are that they need to activate whatever on that day, they've been doing it for so long that it just happens on the mound. And that's, like you said, that's the dream. That's the goal for everybody. I wish I could pinpoint what percentage of time that happens for me, but it is not 100% of the time. I don't even think it's 90 or 80% of the time. So,
but I think that's why the Performance Center is so incredibly valuable. Like, and we talked about this, like, and I know for him and I, at least before you came, like, that was the one thing that was like, what can we do to make Hot Corner the single most elite place in the area? And that was it. Like, everybody's doing skill work, everybody. And it's all over the country. Like, it's not just us or it's not just this area, but everyone in the country is doing skill work, right? But what you're seeing is like Cressy's popping up, guys like him, or, even the guy that you're working with in Richmond, like those guys are coming through now because that is actually what's going to help guys perform the highest level skill-wise on the field. And I think a lot of times, like for me, like I say this all the time, before Sam, I used to peak hitters. Like our hitters would peak out because I got them to a point with their swing of the capabilities that their body could handle. And then once they actually started getting stronger and understood how their body moves better, now we get through that plateau. We're actually developing them at a lot faster rate. So now we're seeing guys, we got middle school guys that are hitting 90 miles an hour exit velo. We got high school guys that are getting close to 100 now, which is like crazy and low high school guys. We're talking freshmen, sophomores. Like, we're not talking about these junior, seniors. Like, those are the guys that we worked with in the past that are kind of now starting to work out. But if you really think about development, like, we put too much focus on skill work. We put too much focus on just go throw a bullpen and try to throw strikes. Yeah, but if you're not getting stronger with your body, that you can feel and understand where your pelvis is supposed to be. You know, we talk about like our rib cage all the time now. I'm starting to see myself, even when I load and try and separate my body from a hitting perspective, like, I notice that it is way more about my ribs than it is just about my body separating. It's not just hip shoulder separation all the time, because for some people it might be rib, for some people it might be core, for some people it might be hips. We don't know, but it's the weight room that does that. And that's the one thing I think we're changing. But I think for the majority of people that play baseball, it's like, if I just do hitting lessons, I'm gonna hit better.
Yeah.
I kind of contradict myself. I say this all the time. I contradict my job because I actually think that the performance center side of things is sometimes more valuable, because once you get in the weight room and get stronger and understand movement quality, then I can teach you how to be a skilled athlete.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That's why you look at these elite athletes all over the country that are like LeBron James or Tony Gonzalez, who is a two-sport athlete. Like, those guys are just so incredibly athletic that once they just understand little skill pieces from each sport, they can compete. Mm-hmm. You know, but a lot of us, that's why you've seen a lot more one sport athletes, because we're specialized in the skill side of things instead of like just get in the weight room and learn how to move right. You know what I mean? But like, what are you doing now? What's your throwing program like? Like, this is the one thing I see with a lot of pitchers, that they don't have a throwing program. It's like, pitch on Friday, pitch on Sunday, take off Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, pitch on Friday, pitch on Sunday. And you're seeing guys that aren't developing that velocity because it's just not a routine base. Now, I understand that in some tournaments we might need you for an inning here and there. You might start a game, close a game. Like, I get that's tough. But like, what's your routine like? Like, today you threw a bullpen. It was like a live bullpen though, right?
It was in the middle.
It's kind of like a little bit more of a more intense bullpen, let's say, right? Yeah. So like, how do you go through your week, and like, what's your process and what do you try to do?
Well, with that too, like, how do you consolidate stressors as in like lifting with throwing?
Okay, so we want in season or out of season?
Start with out of season, because I think a lot of people don't necessarily understand the off period that you take. Mm-hmm. It's not 3 months, right? A lot of people take off a whole winter from throwing. Like, it's not 3 months. It's 4 to 6 weeks, right? And I'll let you get into it more. Like, what's your build-up plan like? Where do you want to be when you get to spring training? And then what is it you're in season as well?
Yeah. So this past year, it was a little bit different, but it's still a very good outline of how something like that for maybe a higher level guy should be. So I played up until I think it was last few days of September, early October in the European qualifiers. And then I knew I was going signed to go play winter ball in Australia. So I knew I had a short amount of time, and it's like, hey, like, we made it to the Olympics, great, that's happening next year. But like, my goal is still to play Major League Baseball. I need to get signed. What do you have to do to get signed? You got to throw harder, you got to throw more strikes, and you got to throw all your pitches harder. So what am I going to do? I'm going to try to gain velocity this offseason. And rather than just feeling things in the weight room and then doing my basic on-ramp to then maybe more of a long toss phase to maybe a little bit of like throwing the ball harder, pull downs without really velo, and then to blending that with mound work, I said, let's go a little bit riskier this winter. And I consulted the guy, someone at place I was training at in Richmond, Andrew, my strength coach as well, and basically came up with a plan and a schedule that worked so well for me. Like, I could never, no matter what, I mean, my velocity fluctuates anywhere from 90 to 96, 97. And, but I've never been able to get above like 90, 91, sometimes 92 in a bullpen. And I always be a little worried. And then you get out there and in your first game and velocity is significantly higher than that and everything's fine. But it was like, you know what, to get signed, like, you have to be better than that. Like, that's just how the game is right now. So basically this is not normal. I'm older. My body's prepared a little bit more. I would recommend for most people taking more time than this. But I took 10 days off after the qualifiers, and I did, because it was only 10 days, I don't think I lost the range of motion. I don't think I lost that feel that you need for throwing. So those 10 days, and then I think I did pretty much like 4 to 6 weeks of like on-ramping to long toss. And there was probably 2 or 3 weeks in there where once a week, my buddy and I were letting it go decently far long toss. I'm a reliever. I don't really long toss that much. And then once that phase ended, I basically had the same structure of throwing every single day of the week from week to week, not like Monday and Tuesday were the same. It was Tuesday and then the next Tuesday were the same. And what I noticed was I was able to build on intensity, like effort, exertion, like everything every single week. So I would literally go, Mondays were bullpen, Tuesdays were off just because I had like 8 hours of lessons on Tuesdays and had to drive pretty far for them. Wednesdays were a long toss day, whether that was 150 or 330 feet. Thursdays was very light catch, and Fridays were velo days, whether that was just pull downs to mound velo, whatever that was. Saturdays were usually off or light catch, depending on how I felt. And then Sundays were more of like a medium day. And literally every week I would notice differences every single day. Long toss days, able to throw it further, recovering faster. My velo literally went up every pull down day. First week I pulled down at 95. Next week I think I was 97. Then I had 2 weeks in a row where I was stuck on 99.9. Took a deload week, and then I was up to 101 the next week. And I had 2 bullpens where I was literally like 94 to 96. Never been able to do anything like that before. So with that structure though, my lifting mirrored the same thing. Monday after my bullpen was a heavy lift day. Tuesday was more of like a cardio lift day. I think Wednesday was movement. Thursday was another heavy day. And I was just doing the same thing. Even though Thursday was a heavy day and I was doing velo stuff the next day, I was in the same routine. So my body adapted and I was used to it and I was recovering really well. Friday was movement. Saturday was doing absolutely nothing and don't think about baseball. Sunday was a little bit of movement and throwing. And that structure helped me so much. Now, I'm not going to have the same structure as that with a 13-year-old kid this off season. But there still has to be routine. Like there still has to be reasoning why you're doing what you're doing on a given day, and your training should mirror that. How do I handle my stressors? Is that what you asked?
Yeah, I do consolidate. So like a lot of times, for instance, I see guys right now, the conversation I have with a lot of parents, they have their kids that are playing, let's say Tuesday, Thursday, maybe Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. And they're like, well, I don't know when my kid can lift because they can't lift on Monday, Wednesday because something comes up. Can they lift before a game? Or do they lift after? Like, how does that go? So if you have a high intensity throwing day, like your velo day, how does that basically combine with like what do you do for lifting? I think you kind of mentioned that earlier. Yeah. Where I'm like, I think it was Monday, you have a high intensity throw and a high intensity lift. Yeah.
I don't really like lifting after I pitch because it's like I am 100% max effort, whether it looks like that or not when I'm pitching. I'm all out. I'm gassed after. I mean, today I didn't throw. I was very tired. Like arm didn't feel great in my bullpen, and I lifted after my lift took forever. Like I was moving slow, and that's just what my schedule this week lined up to be because the schedule is a little bit different right now. But I just think it has to be prioritized. Like if you're taking baseball seriously, and that means you want to have the best high school career possible, you want to play college ball, or you want to play in major leagues, doesn't matter what it is. Like baseball is a sport where you have to start from the ground up. It doesn't mean just play and then throw in your training when you can. Like if you want to be the best you can when you're playing, you have to prioritize what you're doing off the field. And if that means that you have to miss a lift 2 days a week for whatever reason, that means I'm calling Sam or I'm texting you and I'm saying, what can I do at home to make up for that? And instead of squatting or deadlifts, maybe you're going to give him 30-second Bulgarian iso holds where he's not losing strength because he did that week. So for me, it's like, if you're serious about this, I know it's a game. I know it's fun. Like I have a blast playing baseball. That's why I'm 27 years old and still playing and played indie ball for a few years. But like, you have to like prioritize your day around that. But that doesn't mean that you can't have fun and you can't do social activities in between. Like that's how I eliminate stressors. Is I've gotten so much better throughout the years at shutting the baseball switch off when it's time to shut that off. For sure. Like I'm so excited this weekend to go away for 2 days and shut baseball off. I'm going to Cooperstown, so maybe that's a little cliche there, or not cliche, a little contradictory right there. Yeah. But you have to shut the baseball. You have to shut baseball off sometimes. But in the same sense, you have to prioritize it and make sure if my body feels like crap, I'm going to either just rest and recover, or I'm going to consult someone that I trust and figure out what can I do to feel better right now. Like what's going to help me feel better and be the best that I can the next day. So
yeah, I think we see a lot of guys that are on probably more so on the side that they don't do enough. Yeah. Like we do see some guys. I mean, I have a guy that comes to my mind who literally wouldn't shut down ever. And we had to have 17 conversations with him and be like, hey, why don't you play a game real quick? Yeah. We're gonna play Foursquare to warm up today. Like, would you do that? And he's like, no, dude, it's too fun.
Yeah.
I gotta lift. And it's like, man, you gotta have some fun and enjoy everything too, because like you said, this is a process, man.
It's tough.
Like this isn't a 1 year process, not even a few. Like this is years. Like if you're 14, you're probably lifting for hopefully the rest of your life to some extent.
Yeah.
You know, so like having that fun mixed in there, I think is so important. Being able to like shut it off, but still like just stay in your routine.
Yeah.
This is so big. It's just so big.
I think one thing with baseball is you fail so much, and it's like baseball's America's pastime, and whether you're a baseball fan or not, like parents love to be involved with it. So you get stressors from coaches, parents, so many people that want you to have success. So I think sometimes it's hard for kids to shut that off because they know that they're only going to please everybody around them if they perform better. And I think from conversations like this and educating people, like I mean, baseball means a lot to people, but it's not everything. Like you have to be able to turn the page sometimes. I think in the long run, like you said, that's what's going to yield the most success for someone.
Right, but the same thing that you said though that made a lot of sense was like you said you have your golf clubs in your car.
Yeah.
Like you need that's a big thing for you.
Yep.
Like I'm gonna go golf.
Yep.
That gets me away from baseball. And you know what? A lot of pitchers do that. A lot of pitchers even like I was watching like Bryce Harper goes golf on the offseason, Mike Trout. You know, like those guys are so entrenched in the game. Like it's so in depth in it, but they're still able to still be a kid. I mean, realistically, all of us are still young. Like they're still able to be a kid. And I think that changes. I mean, think about how much pressure. I mean, it's probably not pressure to him. Think about how much pressure people think Mike Trout has. $400 million guy. He's huge. Hits every single year, but he's still able to turn it off.
Yeah.
You know, I think that what that does though is it allows you to still be more intent in your actual work. You know what I mean? So when he is in the weight room, because it's not like a drag for him, he probably crushes it. You know, and then when he gets outside on the field, he probably has a blast. But then when he's outside and he's his family or he's hanging out with his buddies, like he probably just chills. You know what I mean? But what I see with a lot of kids though, because they never turn that off switch on, it's a drag when they're in.
Yep.
You know, it's a drag when they're training. They're tired. You know, it's just like, I got to go do it again. But the burnout happens when two things happen. You're not enjoying it when you're there because there's too much pressure. Whether that's a coach that's putting pressure, your parents are putting pressure. You know, like I hear this one all the time. Like, we're spending so much money for you to play baseball. We want you to actually be attentive while you're there. Well, I get that, but
it's not a classroom though.
Exactly. Like, think about how many competitions we have in the facility. Like, I want kids to be able to come in and have fun while they're competing. I mean, honestly, we played Foursquare a couple of times. Like, I notice whenever they do something that's not baseball related, at least for the first like 10, 15 minutes when they're in the facility, our session is so much better because they're like more relaxed. It's not that pressure of, okay, I got to really think about my swing for the next hour. We're not walking into a math class where you're like intently staring at a book for an hour. It is a game, but like we can intently get better over the course of an hour and have fun. Like, I can't tell you how much fun I still have every single day, but it's because I'm not forced to do anything. You know what I mean? I'm not forced to be there. I just enjoy it because like that's my place to have a good time. But I compete and I enjoy it and we mess around with each other and it's a good culture. But I think for a lot of kids, it's that I have to go get better today because of the expectation of I'm getting a hitting lesson, so I have to get better today.
It's costing my parents $80 for the hour for hitting. I have to take every swing as hard as I can, and then they're miserable after 20 minutes.
Yeah, and instead of that whole like, all right, I'm just here. This is part of my process. Like, this is a commitment. It's a commitment for everybody, but this is a long-term commitment.
Yeah.
Like, I can't tell you how many times like I hit 5-6 days a week when I was in college, and I struggled a lot for the first couple of years. But as I continued on that process, I got better. You know, and that's really what it is. I think that what we're trying to do is we're trying to give kids the understanding of, you know, you need to hit more, and this is what I want you to work on. You need to lift obviously more, but I want you to know how to do it so that when you're out there, let's say doing it on your own, so you're lifting at your house one day, working 2 days a week, you actually understand the movement we're trying to do, so you get in that habit of doing it. But still, like I don't even necessarily care. I don't hate that kids play video games because that may be an outlet for them. But now if you're doing anything for 10, 15 hours a day, you're probably going to get pretty, you're going to hate it. You know, and I think for a lot of guys, like that's the one thing that's really cool about your story is that like even when it was tough, you continued to love it. But I like your off-season program where you're taking Saturdays off switch. I'm not doing anything. You know what I'm saying? And I even noticed with myself, like for the last 4 years, I took 0 days off. Like I worked 7 days a week for 4 straight years, right? And it was good, don't get me wrong, but I'm taking 1 day off a week now. And I noticed for myself, I'm like, we can do a podcast, we can do this, we can do that. I have more energy in the facility. I have a good routine. Like I see myself having a higher
family and your kids.
That's it, man. Just a higher amount of energy because you do have that off switch where you're able to just kind of digress and relax for a little bit. I see that, that's huge for a lot of players. So I think there's way too much pressure for the young guys all across the board.
I feel really bad for the kids that walk in and look timid during a lesson or whatever it is. It's like they're scared. It's like, no, like this is your outlet. Like come, like we're gonna have fun. And like the big thing with me coming here and realizing, I know it happened this progressed very quickly right away. The first time I was here, we kind of figured that this was gonna work out. But a big reason also why I wanted to come in here and get started, like I'm so thankful you guys have gotten me clients and I've been able to start, but it's like, I want to get to know these kids and I want other people to like see that like when I'm with them, like I'm smiling, like I'm not really coaching them, like I'm trying to put myself on the same level, but just like share what I know with them to help them achieve whatever they want to. And I think that's so important in lessons. And I mean, you guys both, I've seen both of you do this. Obviously, it's a little bit easier on the lesson side of it than it is in the weight room, but you have to make games of it and like you have to make fun. You have to make it fun for the kids so that they're going to keep coming back. And when they're there, they're looking forward to this. Because if it's a chore or if it's like going to class for them again, and like they're not going to get the most out of it, they're not going to be locked in. For me, it's the kids that I can joke around with a little bit, talk to, and have normal conversations with, but then we turn it on. Like someone like Gavin, for example, and Anthony, like at Greco, like I've loved working with both of them because they ask me questions back. They joked around a little bit. Like we've had conversation besides baseball, but then when we're in there, like the hour flies by because it's like they're having a good time, I'm having a good time, we're talking a lot, we're getting a lot of work in. So for me, that's how I try to reinforce as positively as I possibly can, because I don't want them to think that I'm their teacher. I want them to think that I'm on the same exact level.
Same level as them, exactly right. That's I mean, we always mess around with me. I mean, everybody says to me, like I'm just a big kid, but I try to do that.
Yeah.
I want an 8-year-old kid to come in and be able to kind of mess around with me a little bit because it adds that flow of like, we can mess around, but then I've been able to do so the past couple of years. It's like, all right, boom, let's turn it on. And then once you do a good job and you get through the drill that we're trying to do, or you understand the feeling I'm trying to get you to understand, then it's like, all right, let's mess around a little, let's play a little bit of a game, right? And I see that from the performance side. Like I didn't really, to be honest with you, I didn't understand how to add games in the performance, but like honestly, a couple of the Thunderbolt guys, I mean, we were playing spike ball with them. After a workout, you're doing foursquare, or you're doing some type of not like dodgeball, or you throw the ball around a little bit just to mess around. I think that they enjoy that because then it's not just get in, get a lift in, and then leave. You know what I'm saying? I really, really like that. I think it happens with the young guys too. But the one thing that I really want a lot of people that are listening to understand this is like you're a professional baseball player, but like there is so much more that goes into it than just throwing a baseball 7 days a week. Like there is the performance side of things, and I didn't understand this before. I mean, think about it. When I opened, it was just strictly skill work. What I'm learning, even having Sam in the facility now has been incredible because now I can actually see how it translates. But like it's a game changer. I don't think a lot of people really understand the depths of how important taking care of your body is, not only on a nutritional standpoint, but also just physical fitness. You know what I mean? Like how many kids do we work with on just getting to an athletic position?
Oh my God.
A lot.
Every kid.
Because like we are so entrenched in the skills.
So if you don't know how to feel an athletic position, like getting into an athletic position is so uncomfortable. When I was like an awkward mover, yes, I was bigger and stronger, but I was an awkward mover when I was younger. And it's like stepping it up every pitch or getting down to feel the ground ball was the most uncomfortable thing ever. Yeah, you could pick it because you have good hands.
Right.
Yeah. And that's why
Don't you dare.
But what's so funny about it is you guys are significantly stronger than me, both of you, by far. But I just move. I'm able to move well, so like I can get down to. So I don't understand that personally. Like I don't, because I don't know what it feels like. You know what I mean? But like from a strength standpoint, like I really struggle to hit the ball 100 miles an hour. Like really, really, really struggle to do that. But like I move pretty well.
So then think about what's going to happen to you if you were playing a full minor league season in the dog days of August and September. That's when
my numbers are going to start to go down because that's why the strength is important. Now, and I will say this, like I don't understand personally, like when people get hurt, like I was overpitched as a kid. I had the inverted W, like bad when I pitched, really bad. And I threw hard. I did not have any regard for my arm whatsoever. If my coach told me to pitch 100 pitches, I'm going to go and do it. And I didn't really lift, but I never got injured. And what I'm learning from Sam is that it's just because my body moves well. But like for a lot of kids, like we always say him and I are if we were to combine ourselves, like it would be the perfect person because he's strong and I'm mobile. But like, if you think about it from a kid standpoint, that's why the performance center is so important, because what happens to that 12-year-old kid that's absolutely just super strong naturally, but doesn't move well? Well, we can fix that and work on that and actually help them understand movement quality better. But on like vice versa with myself, like we have a lot of kids who are hypermobile because their body hasn't like tightened up yet. So this is a really good time for us to continue to keep that mobility, but also work on the strength piece of it too. And you're a perfect example of that, because you've had to work on that to keep your career going. Or if we can get the 9, 10, 11-year-old kids actually do that from the get-go, like who knows what will happen in 8 or 9 years.
I really struggle.
No, all I was going to say is I think we had a really good conversation about when you are tight. Like, let's say that you do have limitations, like IR, and how that actually goes into your skill training of like, okay, when you set up for this, you can't be in this position because you physically can't do it. I know we talked about that with one of the pitching guys, and we were talking about one of the hitting guys.
I just said that today,
And you know, so I think that if you could touch on that for people to understand, like, hey, this isn't just about getting strong, because if you have limitations, like you need to know those limitations so you can either work on them or at the time at least just adapt to them. You know, and I know you've done that in your career.
And if you have those limitations, I mean, you're going to hit a wall at some point. I mean, I was topping out at 92, 93 miles an hour for legitimately my sophomore year of high school until my 6th year of college. That's a long time. And I hit a wall. So the limitations were you hit a wall with velocity, and I was injured nonstop. So how do you, I think the best way to deal with those limitations is that side of it, but also there are some anatomical things that can't be fixed. We joked about my ball and socket of my hip and being stuck in or not having any IR. I came across a post from Christian Wonders when he was with Cressy about guys who were very externally rotated their hips and ankles, set up that way on the mound. When I made that adjustment, like immediately on video, I noticed so many differences and my velocity shot up. I was struggling a lot early last year. Velocity wasn't where I wanted it to be. As soon as I made that adjustment, like velocity shot up, repeatability, I was throwing way more strikes. That's why it's like I said, I did it from a research standpoint, but there is no reason now why if you notice that you have limitations or things that don't feel right, if you don't have access to a place like Hot Corner or have someone like Sam to talk to, like it can all be done online. There is nothing that is holding you back from DMing someone or sending an email to someone that you know that's going to help you deal with those limitations. And one thing I think that we've had conversations with, probably haven't said it as like directly as this, but it's come up in different ways. I think that like a facility with the semi-private training on one side and then the baseball on the other side in the same location is like the most ethical way to go about like a baseball business. Because if you have someone who, I mean, you're going to have kids, there's always going to be something that can be identified and fixed, or identified and then fixed in the weight room. But like, yes, you're having kids come in. There are kids who are probably coming in just for skill work and not training, but you can only do so much to get someone on the weight room side of it. It's literally right there for them to take a few steps to the other side. And maybe if you're paying X amount of dollars for hitting lessons, like cut that in half, do half as many hitting lessons, and then invest the other half in the weight room. And that's why I think having those together is literally like the most ethical way possible to go about baseball development. And yeah, like we're at a time period now where there's still, Ron and I had this conversation, there's still so many people who don't understand the performance and how it ties into baseball development. But just by having a place that is teaching movement, teaching training, teaching routine the right way with skill development, like that's what you need to be the best baseball player that you can be. And then when you add in the culture on top of it, you have pro guys in there, you have college guys coming in, you have guys as young as 7 years old, like parents coming in and watching, like creating that comfortable culture in that environment. Like that's the all-encompassing like baseball development that I think, I mean, I can't speak as much for all sports, but I know movement is movement. But like, I think that's what helps you get to peak athletic performance.
Well, that's what creates most value. I mean, literally, like we were talking right before quarantine happened. Actually, right when it happened, you and I were sitting down. We're like, how can we provide the most value to kids? And I saw myself just sitting in a cage with one kid at a time, only doing skill training. Like it worked for a while, but it's not the peak in development. Period. Like if we have performance training on top of that, and I can look at a kid like Gavin, who throws hard, but has some, he needed to work on his arm a little bit, who hits the ball well, who's super hypermobile, but needed to get strong. Like we saw a huge change in him athletically as soon as he started working out. I mean, and I'll even say like a lot of people chase the scholarship. There's too many travel baseball people that chase the scholarship or chase a professional baseball contract right away. They don't chase the love for the game. But what I notice is Like, I'm going to pull a kid from the Thunderbolts, Casey O'Brien. Like, 79 exit velo as a sophomore in high school. Like, needed some fixes, needed to figure out his body a little more. We get him in the weight room. Literally, it was like, I remember it was the first kid that we ever worked with. There was an overnight. And he came in here, or he worked with Charlie, who's with the Twins. We talk about him a ton. But he worked with Charlie, figured out how to engage his hip. Came in here, started doing med ball throws, understood how his hip really works. Boom, 90 plus exit velo in like a week. I mean, he jumped like 12, 13 miles an hour in like a week. It was never a skill issue, ever.
So he never felt anything.
He just never understood how to engage his hip or actually the hinge and load, right? And then what happens? 1 year later, boom, he's committed to playing in college Division I school. Like literally, so that's the importance of it. Like for the people that are actually chasing, whether it's to get onto a better travel team or to make the high school team or to go junior college, professional, whatever you want to do, like literally it comes down to we can only do so much on each front, but they work simultaneously together. That's why we ultimately made the decision to move in one place. I mean, think about how it's changed even since we've done that.
That's been huge.
It's been huge. And now people, I think, are starting to see that even at a young age, 10 years old, like, we really can actually help you. And it actually has zero to do with the money. It has nothing to do with money. It has 100% to do with we can provide more value by teaching you how to run, teaching you how to move well. We're going to teach you how to eat properly. And then hopefully you get better at baseball too along the way. But we're creating better humans. Like people are understanding how to be better people.
I mean, we talked about so much being able to feel. We've talked about it even a lot here, but like being able to feel is legitimately the most important thing in the world.
Oh my God.
Because if you can't make adjustments on your own, like you're not going to be with a coach every single time you throw. You're not going to be with a coach every time you lift or every time you hit. You have to be able to make adjustments. So I know we talked about like getting into the left hip when you throw. And I realized this, like we had that conversation. I do a lot of like sideline pullbacks where we're working actually pulling the left hip back. And a lot of guys have no concept of what that feels like. And we'll go and do like a hip airplane, and they have no idea how to actually rotate the pelvis. They'll rotate, and I see guys all the time when they're basically ending their delivery, just rotating through like the low, like basically lumbar spine, and they have no concept of hip rotation, no pelvic rotation. And getting them to understand that and just to feel it is so big. Because then when they go to hit, they go to pitch, it doesn't matter. They can actually identify that. I think that's the biggest thing. That's why when we had the first conversation, my eyes like lit up. I was like, this is awesome. Because now kids can understand. They can get that conversation everywhere now. It's not just like a one-place conversation. You're in weight room now. It's like, okay, you're gonna talk about this with hitting. You're gonna talk about pitching, and you're gonna talk about weight room. You're gonna get killed by it. You will never forget it.
And that's how that stuff sticks, and you learn. No, I agree. And then even yesterday, like I had a group of, I think it were 11-year-olds for the first time, and they walk in and dads are telling me all different things that they need to work on. I'm like, all right, let's take a look at this. And the kid cuts the ball. We need to get him to throw the ball straight. Okay, great. I'm sure there's a lot of things that I can pick out that will work out, that will help with this. And first thing I see is the kid is holding a two-seam fastball every time he throws as hard as he possibly can with his thumb on the side of the ball like a slider. Other thing is when he takes a step to throw, as soon as he steps, his whole upper body turns and faces the target instead of staying a little bit closed, I guess you could say, and like just feeling some kind of torque and tension in his back. And then almost every single time a young kid throws the ball, they're so worried about a fielding position or like following their throw that they'll throw the ball and they're just running away, or running if they're a righty towards first base side. And it's like, whoa, we're not playing the infield right now. Like we're trying to pitch and throw the ball as hard as we can. And then of course, at the end of a lesson, dad wants to see their kid on the mound throwing the ball as hard as they can. It's like, whoa. That's going to happen down the line. But your kid needs to learn how to stop his front foot when he throws and pull his hip back. Okay, because if he plants on his left foot and tries to throw, and before he even releases the ball, he's already walking towards the first base dugout, like he has no chance at ever reaching his full potential, or ever spinning the ball with true backspin and throwing the ball in a straight line from point A to point B. Like all of that stuff becomes impossible. So,
but that's all the process, though.
Yep.
Like that's all the process. Like you want your kid to throw strikes, well, he has to understand how the body is supposed to just work in general. Why does his elbow hurt? Well, it's probably because he doesn't understand how to feel or load his hip up. He doesn't understand how to get through hip extension. He doesn't understand to actually stay closed up. So as soon as they open, they lose their arm.
And their elbow leads or something
like that happens. So the real big thing, and this is why I'm super excited about this whole thing, this all happened very fast. Even with Sam and with you. Like I think with you and I, it was like 2 conversations.
Literally.
All right, performance centers together. And with you, it was like, all right, I'm coming
You actually
in.
told me in the second conversation that you were buying the place. I was like, oh, all right. I guess that's happening.
Right, but when you see how much value it brings, it's a no-brainer. You know what I'm saying? I think that ultimately, at the end of the day, like I think the biggest thing for everybody is we can't just work out once or twice a week, and you can't just do skill work. Like you actually have to make a conscious effort to like really work on your body, and you can probably play whatever sport you want, realistically. You know what I mean? I think that's the biggest thing. Like when you look at a big league athlete, like when you look at a major league baseball player, I would say the majority of them, probably say 85% of them, are extremely high-level athletes that are good at baseball. You know what I mean? When you look at a basketball player, they're extremely high-level athletes that are good at basketball. They just like basketball more, so that's what they put their effort in skill-wise. You know, you're not seeing it, and I think that where travel baseball itself is kind of, it's hurting itself now, is that we're putting so much effort into, you need to play baseball 12 months a year, and you have to get better at your skills, otherwise you're not going to make it. But like, I've seen it even with Sam, just you, like that's changed everything. Like once our kids got stronger, they just got better at baseball, period. Once they started moving better, they threw harder.
Yeah, life gets easier. Pretty much everything.
Way
gets easier.
You have to build a foundation in every single thing that you do, and it applies so much to sport.
But your process started probably at 5 years old, and you're still learning.
Oh yeah.
Like you're not going to ever really hit that, like, okay, I've mastered baseball. That's what's so hard about the game, is that like it's constantly changing and adapting, and you're constantly getting better at it. And like think about 15 years, or think about 5, 6 years ago, we didn't understand movement quality like we do now. You know, so that's why it's getting better. That's why you're seeing guys consistently throw 97 to 100 now, instead of like whenever we were playing, like 90 was hard. You know,
and there's still people out there who are throwing hard as can be that maybe don't move that well, but that speaks, I think, to the routine side of it. Like going back to what you said, the kid can only get in the weight room once or twice a week. Are you better off getting 4 lifts in 1 week, none the next, and then 2 the following week? Or are you better off lifting every Wednesday? That's it for the next few months. Like you're probably gonna get more out of that than you will varying your schedule from week to week.
But like if you think about it though, it's baseball. Like for you, your off-season program is you're doing something baseball related 6 days a week.
Yes.
But it's just a routine. It's just this is what I'm doing on Tuesdays, and this is what I'm doing on Wednesdays, and you probably don't change that very much.
Nope.
And that's why you consistently get better. Like even what I see with a lot of kids now is there's not that intensity of okay, I need to get 3 lifts in this week. But even though I play Friday, but Friday's a lift day, I still have to get that lift in.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter that you're playing. Like your routine says you're gonna lift Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We're gonna lift Monday, Wednesday, Friday, no matter what.
I think quarantine was the best example ever.
Yes.
Because you have some people who absolutely crushed and stayed on their routine, even though they would text me and be like, hey, what the heck do I do now? Like, how do I actually not lose all my strength, right? But I had a significant amount of athletes that did very little.
Correct.
They did very little, and it showed very heavily when they came back. And you see guys who are almost like less athletic now. They literally can't move because they got out of shape and everything doesn't look as clean anymore. Where all it takes, if you sprinted 3 days a week to some ISOs, whatever it is, you're probably not going to lose much. You'll lose some probably, but you're going to limit it.
Right.
You know, it's just the routine, it's a habit. It's a lifelong process.
And that's a big thing with even from the business side of stuff too. Like for us, we just have to stay consistent and we're going to be fine. I think if you constantly vary everything that you do, you never find that routine that works. So, I mean, that just applies to life. Like when you get into a routine, you probably just do a lot better. You know what I'm saying? Like think about all the kids. Like if they took those 3 months off, they're really suffering now because they're trying to ramp up so fast to get everything in. Thank goodness. I mean, you do a good job with the movement and all that stuff. Otherwise, kids are going to get hurt.
Yeah.
You know, I was literally just talking to a PT yesterday. I was just talking to him. You ready for this? I'm not going to say any names. He literally said to me, this is the greatest time of my life. I'm like, why? He said, nobody did anything for 3 months and everybody's doing everything now. Do you know how many people are hurt?
So many, I'm sure.
And I'm like, that doesn't process in my brain though. Because I'm like, if you're a baseball player and you really want to be good at, let's say any sport, like it's just a routine. If you just have to do it consistently, even if it's less, because we really were shut down for a long time. So even if you're just doing something, you're probably getting more out of it. You know what I mean? I mean, think about the big league guys still had to take off those 3 months. I mean, it's not like facilities are like, oh, hey, we'll sneak you in. Like you weren't allowed to do anything.
Yep.
They had to figure it out too. You know, so I think that that's the biggest thing. But I mean, overall, like I think that the combination of you two is huge. We've never had this.
Agreed.
Like I've never felt comfortable with a pitching guy that I was like, okay, now it all meshes together. This is the first time that we've all really been working on all cylinders. And I think you're 100% right in saying that like kids do get a little bit timid. But I don't really think people understand the opportunity that's in front of them. I never had anything like this. I mean, we've got 2 professional catchers. We've got a professional pitcher. We've got a guy who understands movement, that does strength conditioning, that can coincide with the hitting side, catching side, and pitching side. I mean, like, there's an opportunity in front of a lot of people that I don't think they really understand. But I think the biggest thing is just making sure that they continue to just do it all the time. You know what I mean? I'm glad. This is the reason why we opened this place, was to really actually do something different than it's ever been here before. I think we're doing that. But, you know, obviously, you know, with your career kind of taking off, I think it obviously helps. But realistically, for a lot of people to actually know what's happening, like, you're still learning. It's not just that you're coming here to teach. Like, I mean, I can't even say how many times you guys have talked together about some things that you're doing with your warm-up and how to do some other stuff, or what your workout's like, or you've asked him, like, hey, what should I do here? How can I get stronger through this? Or whatever the case is. Like, it's just a constant learning process. And you're never going to find that final, you know, I'm there. Even big leaguers continue to work on everything. And it's super awesome to kind of hear that. I mean, we're the same age, so your career's taken off, but it's all based on just trying to continuously learn through the weight room.
Yeah.
But you're not injured anymore.
Knock on wood. Nope.
But the reason why is because you're doing more of this stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're actually taking care of your body.
What I also notice is, like, the little aches and pains that come up throughout the course of the season, like, they go away so fast. I complain, you saw this the other day, complain about a weird feeling in my neck for one day, and I think it's the end of the world, and literally completely better the next day. That stuff in the past that would probably linger on for a long time. So yeah, I mean, you have to, I like the idea of just like being a sponge and soaking everything up around you. And the more information that you soak up, like, you'll be able to weed out the BS versus like information that you really need to take in, like, take to heart. And that's only going to happen is if you continuously try to learn and pick the brains of those around you.
But properly, I think the biggest thing I've learned from you, like, even hearing that, is like, velocity and health is going to come from being able to recover properly and fast. But you can't just recover and then go out and throw gas again. Like, recovery happens through movement quality, lifting, taking care of your body, time, sleep,
shutting baseball up.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like, how many times have you talked? We see, like, we just had a conversation today, literally, about a kid who slept 3.5 hours last night. What are you going to do productive as an athlete with 3.5 hours of sleep? You need 8, period.
Sleep, you know? Go back home and sleep more, and then come talk to me.
Right.
Literally.
Yeah.
And don't sleep 12 or 13, because that's too much. But there's that range. You know, and I think there's so much more into that, but really, this is how kids understand how to get through life too. That's why I love sports, right? And ultimately, like, I'm super excited to have this whole combination of everything. We're going to do a lot of really good things for kids this winter. I'm really super excited about it. But I think what's more exciting is to be able to watch, you know, from Sam and I's perspective, because we don't play anymore, is to watch guys like Matt, Vinny, you, Charlie, to be able to still continue their careers. But like, now we're watching you guys be able to, I think that we're all learning a lot by teaching it. I think the kids are able to soak in a lot. But like, from a pitching side of things, like, I'm learning more right now than I ever have. I couldn't be more thankful for that. You know, so obviously, I know everybody's going to listen in and probably hear this, and we've got hundreds of people that listen to this, which is really cool. I think the biggest thing that we can take away from it is you're teaching stuff to kids that you didn't learn until it was do or die time, right? And we're going to be able to watch you. I think it's the coolest thing, is to be able to watch you with the Cubs and be able to watch you in the Olympics next year. You know, now all of us, obviously, USA, but like, it's going to be really, really cool to watch you play for Team Israel and actually get there and watch what that competition's like.
USA is not even there yet. Don't forget that.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
They got to earn it.
They got to earn it. That's right. So I think that's a really cool thing. I mean, obviously, think about this. We've got Minnesota Twins, Oakland Athletics, Chicago Cubs, and a guy who's going to pitch for Team Israel in the Olympics next year. I mean, I wish I had that. You know, I don't know how many people have that. So I appreciate you being on this, and appreciate you being here. I think that we learned today that strength conditioning, sports performance, and actually like mobility and movement quality is significantly more important, or just as important as the skill side of things. You know, take care of your body is the biggest thing. So obviously, super excited to have you on. I really appreciate it, and I know that there's going to be a lot more conversations like this, probably a lot more podcasts like this, because when you're around, we're going to be able to do it more. But I really appreciate both of you guys sitting down and talking about it and talking shop, and hopefully we'll be on here soon.
Yeah, this was fun. I think that a lot of parents, kids, coaches, everybody can learn from something like this. So hopefully we can reach as many people as possible.
Blast it out.
Yeah.
Love the path, man.
Oh,
so much knowledge going around, and honestly, just the connection between it all, I think, is so big.
It's just different.
It is.
It's just really, really, really different. Like, I've never been a part of something like this. I didn't get this in college, even though I think our college program did a lot of really.
It's actually why I stopped playing Division I baseball.
Right. But like, this right here is just different.
Yeah.
You know, so super thankful for you guys. I appreciate you guys being on here. So,
Of course.
all right, guys.
Sweet.